Why am I saying Chag Sameach? Because? Very good. We know Lag BaOmer. So we talked about Lag BaOmer a year ago. It's associated with the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who, there's some debate. So obviously, academics and reform rabbis will say he didn't write the Zohar, it was attributed to him. In this tradition, we definitely say the Zohar came directly from Shimon Bar Yochai. Things can be kind of edited and compiled later from wisdoms that were given over earlier, like the Talmud, for instance. We have one figure that compiled the Talmud. We all agree that the sayings in the Talmud came from sages that were much earlier from tradition. Same thing here. At the very least, the Zohar, this great kabbalistic text, is attributed to and comes from the wisdoms of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So a beautiful day to be learning.
Wasn't he in the cave for like
That's
12
right, in the
years?
cave, and came out and was unhappy with something he saw and burnt up whole fields with his gaze. And God said, "Get back in the cave, don't be burning up my creations."
Is that when he wrote the Zohar, when he was in the cave?
I don't know what point. I mean, no one thinks that he wrote the Zohar. The Zohar was not written down at that point. It was taught. It was transmitted. But it's from him. So, and on today, tens of thousands of people are at his grave in Meron. They have huge celebrations and bonfires, and people stay up all night learning Zohar. So the Jewish world is abuzz with some of the Kabbalah and all those vibrations today. A good day. We have a little touch of from the Zohar in the section we're working on. So, yes, hopefully we'll get to that. So to bring us up to speed, we've looked at the structure of the soul, learned about we actually have two souls, a self-centered soul and an other-centered soul. We learned about the insides and outsides of those souls. The 10 sefirot are filtered down to become 10 attributes within each of those two souls. And the souls also have an outside, a behavioral aspect, which is 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. So to be clear, while in the West we sometimes think of thought as my identity, Jewish mysticism says thought is a behavior like any other behavior, and we are able to guide it like any behavior. Then we learned in later chapters about the deeper definitions of a tzaddik and a rasha and a beinoni. Beinoni is our goal. It's an amazing goal because we actually can achieve it. It's totally relevant to our lives. It's a very, very lofty goal, but it's one that we can do at any time. So a really great goal that we're aiming at, and that is to be a beinoni, even though the insides of my soul, my emotional attributes in particular, may be just like a little baby's, just so self-centered. It doesn't matter. What actually exhibits in my thought, speech, and action, I can get that to the level of even a tzaddik, of total perfection. We need techniques for that, and the techniques we started learning were: 1, the mind controls the heart. The mind controls the heart. So we know by how we are created, what we are focusing on mentally guides where our emotions go, and can override even the most triggering emotion. We can direct our mind to the exact opposite anytime we want. So for various reasons, that's a key tool, is that we are harnessing our mind in order to steer our behaviors, and as we're learning now, eventually elevate even our insides to start to match the outsides. Because the mind controls the heart means, on the one hand, I want to yell at this person. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna think about how I can help them, right? And in that war, where the heart's saying, I want to yell, and the mind's saying, no, I'm going to be helpful, the mind will always win. The mind will always tip the balance over the heart. It can, if we decide to. But even deeper, as we're starting to learn now, not only can the mind think about exactly the opposite of what the heart is jumping at, but in fact, over time, the mind can control the heart by actually starting to change the heart in the direction of a tzaddik. So all those emotions of the animal soul, all that impulse of the animal soul, over time, using these meditations, the mind can now even start to transform the insides of the heart. Does that mean I can get to the level of a tzaddik? Probably not. Does that mean that I can be less of a rasha? Absolutely. Does that mean that in all areas I'm going to be much more mature? Maybe not. Does that mean I can pick my most triggering areas and kind of sand them down so they're a little more mature? Yes. So this is where we're learning about the mind controlling the heart, not just at the moment for my behavior, but over the long term to actually do shift the midot of the animal soul. So now we're starting the technique proper of this whole system, and we're calling it the long short way. We got anybody else? Yeah, we got two. And the other tool we have is one more. Very good, very good. The other tool we have is actually something as simple and Jewish as prayer. That we know that even though as a Beinoni, the Beinoni will experience all this struggle on the inside, that the identity of the soul will pull and push and kick because that animal soul is still very strong in its midot. When the Beinoni has a moment of prayer, where they focus fully on the shema, on the amida, an amazing thing happens, and chokhmah of the divine soul is able to flood in and create a supercharged moment where the emotions of the divine soul will unnaturally overcome the emotions of the animal soul. And now during prayer, that Beinoni feels like a tzaddik. Right? Inside and outside are the same. I'm not being bugged by my triggers. I'm feeling a sense of elevation and spirituality and oneness with everything. Of course, that's who I am. But then right after prayer, the phone rings and somebody's car horn wakes up my animal soul, and now I'm back in the struggle. But that yeah?
What's the Beinoni?
Beinoni is, you got a Rasha, which is a self-centered person, typical person. You got a tzaddik, who is a godly, other-centered person. A Beinoni is an intermediate state between the two. That's the focus of this text and this class. And the basic definition is, the inside, the attributes of the soul are like a Rasha, but the behaviors, the garments of the soul are like a tzaddik. And if you watch the review video, that'll make more sense. It'll fill in the details. But this is a real chiddush. It's a real new idea of this author, the Alter Rebbe, that being a Beinoni is a whole spiritual practice. Lost my train of thought. I was saying. What was I saying? Anybody know? Or we're all just. Good. So now we're learning. It's good you ask a question to see whether I was there. I was just rattling it off. Apparently the latter, right? This is good. Now I know. Oh yeah, prayer. Thank you. One of us was here. So that moment of prayer. That moment of prayer, that's a second tool we have. And I do hope most of us have, at least most mornings, put some moment of prayer into our practice, because this isn't information to know, this is information to do, right? We don't want to leave this intellectual. And a big part of doing it is having that anchoring moment where whatever level we're at, we're going to wake up, we're going to establish a new high point for my integration of my soul with my body. And that will be a touchstone that I'll use for the rest of the day. And that will elevate higher and higher over time. And eventually that'll be I'll look back at when I started and I'll think, wow, look at this progress. Perhaps some of us have already had a sense of that I'm a more mature person, and that moment in the morning when I say the Shema or the Amida, that has become it's like a hot air balloon that's gradually lifting my whole life up. That's a key moment. But the other piece that we're going to start inserting now is meditation, Jewish meditation. And that really is the long, short way. New graphic, means it's important, right? So the long, short way is, as we said, a system of Jewish meditation. And we talked a little about the differences between Eastern and Western Jewish meditation, but I want to frame the whole thing in terms of perhaps a new idea, and that is giving souls to mitzvahs and Torah. So giving souls to mitzvahs and Torah. So we learn from Judaism and mysticism that when I do a mitzvah, whether I'm saying the Shema, whether I'm putting a coin in a tzedakah box, whether I'm feeding a hungry person here at Temple Israel, whether I'm learning, whatever it may be, I see the physicality of it, right? I see the sukkah that I built. I see the coin go into the tzedakah box. So I know the mitzvah has a body, because that's the body of the mitzvah. The physical stuff that goes into it, my physical actions that go into it, all that is the body of the mitzvah, and good. I've checked it off the box. I've done my mitzvah. I'm going to get my points in heaven, and I'm a good Jew. End of story. No, not end of story. Because that's just the body of the mitzvah. That's just the body. Now, every body needs a soul, right? Just like us, we have a body and a soul. So you don't want to leave this mitzvah half-baked with just a body. You want to introduce a soul to the mitzvah. And what is that soul? That is all of my intellectual understanding and all of my emotional excitement that is involved in performing that mitzvah. So what is the soul of the mitzvah? It is my intellectual understanding, the depth with which I connect intellectually with that mitzvah, and then the emotions that I exhibit inside. So love and awe are my two main emotions. And when I have great love and great respect as I'm doing that mitzvah, now that physical body of the mitzvah receives a soul. And now it's a full mitzvah with life, with reality, and it can start to travel upwards. And that's the point of Jewish meditation. It's not that I want my consciousness to travel upwards, although it may, but that's not the point. The point is, I want to meditate so that I have the most effective intellectual and emotional inspirations, so that the mitzvah that I then do will have the most vibrant soul and will elevate, as we learn, to several layers of spiritual worlds, and it will unite with the sefirot, ideally, in whatever spiritual world I'm able to access.
Is that where tefuna comes in?
Pardon me?
Is that where tefuna comes in?
Tefuna, yeah, exactly. So tefuna is we'll get to tefuna, yeah?
Okay,
But ideally, that's the end game here. So please understand, when we're meditating, it's not so I can be a spiritual person. It's not so, it is in some way so I can refine my character. But primarily, we're meditating for the sake of the Torah and mitzvahs that we do, because what we're doing is we're taking chunks of the world, we're taking the spiritual sparks within those chunks that only we can elevate, we're binding them up with Torah mitzvahs, and then when we elevate those mitzvahs, that piece of the world that's been waiting for your soul to come down, and your soul and my soul to come down and elevate it, finally, we come down and we get that spark that's been trapped here in physical world, and we elevate it back up to its spiritual source. And somewhere in the umbilical cord of our soul, there's this great joy that, Michael stopped playing video games and taking naps and eating brownies and got to work elevating some of why this soul came down into this body. So as we learn the system of meditation, please understand, it's not centered on me and my consciousness. It's centered on the mitzvot that I'm doing and the Torah I'm studying and elevating those and serving the world to elevate the sparks within the world. Does that make sense? Yeah, any thoughts on that? Questions? It's a difficult concept, and even more difficult for people who have done a lot of meditation typically, because we've been so programmed to think, how calm am I? How spiritual am I? Am I experiencing the cities? Am I getting powers? Am I levitating? Blah, 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 right? Wow, look at me. Some real cool esoteric stuff is happening. It means I've gone a long way, right? So it's possible perhaps to do Eastern meditation without that. I've seen more of the opposite, let's put it that way. But in our system of meditation, nothing to do with that. Okay, am I more spiritual? Am I seeing angels? Who's asking, right? What happened to your Torah and mitzvahs? Did you get distracted because you saw an angel and you didn't elevate your Torah and mitzvahs? Because that was the point, right? So it's a hard concept, but it meshes so beautifully with everything we do at Temple. Because what do you do here? You come and you do mitzvahs and you do Torah, right? And the more you understand that all of life can really be summed up by the 613 commandments. Loving another like yourself. Whoa. Try to do that seriously as a mitzvah, right? Not speaking Lashon Hara, right? Not gossiping, try to do that. Try to take that seriously. Basically, all of life, I can't think of anything that I do that's important that isn't wrapped up in one mitzvah or another and can't be integrated into this system of meditation. That's a bit of far field, though. So, a couple points about meditation that we looked at. So we're generating emotions with meditation. We're not elevating consciousness. So the point of Jewish meditation is to generate those emotions we talked about that function to lift the mitzvahs and Torah. And if you want an image, and if you want to connect to the Zohar today, the image the Zohar uses is that love and fear are the two wings that allow our mitzvahs to elevate to various spiritual worlds and to unify with the sefirot within those worlds. Right? We'll get into more detail about what the worlds are and what it means, whether it's intellectually generated or emotionally generated. But that's the piece from the Zohar that's so powerful, is that every mitzvah, and Torah learning too, has wings. Those wings are love and awe, and that is what gives the soul to the mitzvah and allows it to elevate and not just stick around kind of like close to physical reality. So when we meditate, we become more and more masterful at allowing our divine soul to experience excitement and love and respect and awe around doing all the other-centered Jewish activities that the divine soul likes to do. And the more I can just come back to a certain meditative state and have access to those emotions, the more, okay, bing, 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 bing. Like I'm doing mitzvahs and I'm not leaving them soulless. I'm not leaving them just as a body hanging around the physical world, kind of not yet returned to their source. I'm making sure, zip, 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 like they're all able to return to their source. And before we talk about the four spiritual worlds, please don't think up means there, right? We said that many times. There's nothing physical, there's no time and space in the spiritual worlds. So as soon as a mitzvah is elevated, so to speak, into the spiritual, that physical direction is meaningless. Right? Things that are spiritual are, for starters, outside of time and space. And once you're outside of time and space, you are nowhere and no time, but you also are everywhere and all time. So you're nowhere, there's nowhere I can point to and say that's where it is if it's spiritual. I can't say it's in this table. I can't say it's at this moment. On the other hand, it really is all time and all space because it's spiritual. And if that's tricky to understand, think of perhaps a lower concept like math. 1 + 1 = 2, correct? Can someone point to where that is in physical space or time? Can anybody locate that for me? Is there some place where 1 + 1 = 2 actually I can touch it? Right? And yet it applies to all space and all time. Right? No matter where you are, when you are, 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. So it's true, it applies to all time, it's above time and space, applying to every point of time and space, and yet there's not one point of time and space where I can say, this is where it's coming from, this is the 1 + 1 = 2 spot, or time. Right? So even abstract concepts, say like math, they can be not in time or space, and yet within all of time and space, all the more so anything that's spiritual. So it doesn't relate at all, it's completely above time and space, it's not in it in any way, and yet being above it, it can look down and it relates in all of time and space in its entirety. So we're elevating in that sense. We're elevating into that realm. We're not elevating up, of course. Yes?
Can you relate to another math word, infinity? Is that come into play? Is infinity feel like?
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah. So you know, the infinity's a little trickier because, like, where does infinity exhibit physically? I mean, you can say, you know, between you and I can divide it infinite number of points. Like, say, divide it in half again and again and again. There's infinite number of those. But it gets more complicated because, right, infinity, 1 + 1 = 2, I get. Infinity, it's already, my mind kind of goes blank. So, yeah.
I'm having trouble with mitzvahs centering on meditation centering on mitzvahs and Torah.
Yeah.
So you have to be doing a certain thing. It's like a big thing. You know, you have to be studying, or you have to be able to elevate. And
Well, why is it a big thing?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah.
Can't I just be just going about my daily life, doing my stuff, whatever it is?
Okay, so the question I think you're asking
Not,
is, do I need to be doing Torah and mitzvahs in order for the meditation to
Yes.
really apply?
Yes.
In other words, if I just live my life, I'm a good person, I don't think about Torah and mitzvahs, can't I meditate to be calm, be a better person, and isn't there value in that? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see that connection.
Yeah. So if you remember when we talked about the organs of the soul, and that the soul has vessels and organs that correspond to the positive and negative mitzvahs, and also chapter 5 we learned about Torah and how Torah is really united with Chochmah v'Tzilus in a way that nothing else is. That for us to experience unity with the Ein Sof, the infinite, there's no action on our part that can bridge the gulf between an infinite creator and a finite created being.
So you have to have a
Yeah.
path.
So the path in Judaism is Torah mitzvahs. The commandments, those correspond to the organs of my soul.
Okay.
The Torah, that is our only way to experience true unity with the Ein Sof. So if I want to become more spiritual and calm, absolutely. These are great. Sit, breathe, meditate, focus. Yes. But if I really want to go beyond just spiritual growth and I want to connect with infinite unity and serve that unity by elevating aspects of the world, for that, in our system, you need some kind of Torah
So
mitzvahs.
the answer is yes.
And guess what? Every Jew does 1,000,000 mitzvahs a day. Sometimes they don't realize it.
Yeah.
But everybody's full of Torah mitzvahs, like love another like yourself, right?
We don't recognize it as a path.
Yeah. So this is all, partly this is about simply us recognizing much of what we do falls into this category. And I want to collect those, that call it money that's on the table. Say, look, you're doing mitzvahs already. Now just meditate and learn how to elevate them.
Okay.
And now if you want to add a little more technical mitzvahs, great. But definitely in this system, Torah mitzvahs have a unity with the Ein Sof that is impossible to access otherwise.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I can meditate on a flower and experience spiritual lift and oneness, and that can be very spiritually dynamic, but God's still hidden in that spiritual level that I've lifted myself up to. Right? The Ein Sof, God, is just as hidden in every spiritual world as in the physical world. So if I want to directly interact with the Ein Sof, it's not about what spiritual world I'm in, it's about understanding that a mitzvah is from tzavta, is from connection, and that's the way the Ein Sof is connecting with us in our Jewish soul path. Does that kind of answer that question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Can a Jewish atheist who doesn't read the Torah, doesn't believe in it, doesn't pray, reach unity with Ein Sof?
The question is, can a Jewish atheist who doesn't pray or read from the Torah reach unity with the Ein Sof? In this system, it is harder, right? But every soul has their path, and every person who is in a state where they have their beliefs and their lifestyle, divine providence has brought them to that. So every person has a way to engage in this. And it may be that for that person, they can get into mitzvahs connecting with the beyond and use meditation to connect with that, even if they don't have a concept of God that they consciously relate to. And that may be their path, right? I mean, everybody has a dynamic aspect that can reach up and can grow, right? I think it helps a lot if a person like that would entertain the idea that there is a creator. Obviously, that's the Ein Sof is the only existing being in Kabbalah and in this. So if I'm having a conversation with you and I don't believe you're there, the conversation gets a little stilted, right? I mean, I could convince myself that I'm in, maybe this isn't for the class, right? But I could convince myself that I'm in a virtual reality machine that's perfect, that's already been invented in the future, and I'm not in base reality. This is just like Elon Musk says, I'm just in some simulation here, and you don't exist, right? And if I reinforce that enough, trust me, that could be my reality, my life. And now I'm not having a conversation with you. I'm just talking to programming. So who cares? Let me yell at you. Let me do whatever I want, right? You're not there. So if I really live in that world and I've erased you, my conversation with you, I'm talking to my own ego, right? Now we know that's silly. Of course, we're all souls and this is real and I need to respect you, and that's, connecting with another person, that's the essence of how we connect with God in Judaism. But if that's my relationship with the Ein Sof, the only existing being, it's really hard. It's really hard. So anyone like that, I would ask them to entertain for maybe a month that these ideas that we've looked at, that the greatest geniuses of Jewish history have looked at, that there's only one being and that it's us that are missing the boat, that it's us that have a distorted view of reality. It's a very, very powerful connection that I'd hate to go a lifetime without considering. So, the point of meditation is to generate emotions. That's why for those of us who have done Eastern meditation, there's not a lot of elaborate positions and very, very complex breathing and mandated focuses or mantras, because if I'm trying to clear my mind just to clear my mind, that's very difficult. And you need to be like a Cirque du Soleil trained circus performer to manage that for an hour. I mean, that's very difficult if you've tried to empty your mind and leave it empty. And you really need the very best positions and complex breathing and all, to just keep your mind in that spot, or keep your mind in that spot, however you picture it, because it's not natural. And in Jewish meditation is not the point. You keep your mind empty. Why? So you feel more spiritual? It's not about you. We're not thinking about you getting more spiritual, right? Empty the mind so it's not distracted. Good. Well, I shared some basic breathing techniques. I'll share one more today. But then introduce a divine concept so that we start to generate those divine soul emotions, and we have mastery over them. Why? So then when I do a mitzvah, I can easily give it a soul, a powerful soul that will elevate it. That's it. That's it. You can go as deep as you want and as high as you want with that pathway. And when you do that, you don't have to empty the mind, leave it empty. You just introduce another concept to the mind and contemplate, meditate on that deeper and deeper, and let it fill the mind completely. And trust me, if, as I'd like us to do, we introduce some small meditation before, as I hope we're doing, we say the Shema in the morning, and for 1 month, I sit for 2 minutes, and I do that meditation before I say the Shema. When you come to Temple Israel on a Friday night, and together with our congregation, we say the Shema, we will be generating all these emotions. Our prayers will be rising higher and higher, and even the people around us will, get a little something. And even the whole community can experience an amazing lift, amazing spiritual dynamic productivity from a small group of people going into this and mastering it. So please do, I'm asking everyone, along with whatever prayer practice you're including in the morning, just 2 minutes, a little micro habit is what we're going to create. Even just 1 minute's fine by me. We'll start with a micro habit. And right before you pray, just do our breathing exercise. Introduce perhaps the Shema meditation that we looked at last week. We'll look again. Or any other thing from the Tanya. And allow that to fill your mind. And then say the Shema. And see if you can become more masterful at generating that love and awe to give those prayers and mitzvahs and Torah study the soul that they deserve.
Cantor,
Yes.
are there two, I'm getting the sense, are there two parts to a mitzvah? In other words, if you're generating, that the mitzvah
doing.
can elevate itself,
Mm.
the thing that you're
Yeah.
doing to elevate it, and also comes from inside of you.
Yes. The question, are there two parts to a mitzvah? Yes. And the two parts are the body and the soul.
Okay, so that's considered the body part, and what happens within you in performing the mitzvah is the soul part?
Yeah. So I'm eating my Shabbat challah, and here I have the physical bread, and that's the body of the mitzvah, and I have the knife in my hands and the salt and even my physical voice, every physical aspect of me and my digestive system. So all that is the body of the mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I just absent-mindedly say Baruch and I eat it, okay, halakhically that's fine, but it's just the physical aspect. If I'm so happy to be with my family and recognize the gift that this bread is and see that there's a piece of reality that's mine to elevate, and I do it with love and with awe, now suddenly that physical aspect becomes alive and is able to elevate. And that's the soul of the mitzvah. So definitely, two aspects to every mitzvah. The body, which is the whole physical component of it, and the soul, which is my
Engaging of your emotions.
my whole psyche's engagement with it, intellectual and especially emotional. Good. So let's just do our meditation before we dive into the text again. We're going to be in this chapter for a while. Sorry, it's a really great chapter. Do you love it as much as I do yet?
We'll get through 1 or 2 lines every day.
Good, that's great. Maybe a half a page. So I'm gonna show you one more piece, very simple to add to the breathing, and these you can experiment with and introduce as works for you, right? And Label has a much more elaborate or expanded, call it, program to teach meditation and how to create a wisdom gateway, as he calls it, and introduce divine concepts to the mind in a very dynamic way. I highly recommend, if anyone has some time, to go through his program, which is available at his website. But just, Adam, have you got the slide to pull up?
Yeah, I do.
Great. So pull up in a moment. Or let's pull it up now. I'll remind everyone. So we're visualizing the word shema, which is a sheen, a mem, and an ayin. Never mind the vowels for now. We want to visualize it in our mind. And the kavanah, the intellectual idea we're pulling out of it, is each of these letters stands for a word from Isaiah. Shin is su'u, lift up. Mem is marom, on high. And ayin is enechem, your eyes. So when we say the Shema, email me, I'll send you the slide. Yeah. When we say the Shema, that word, in addition to many other things, is calling on us to lift up our vision, to not accept the limitations of just our physical vision, that we're all separate beings, but to recognize there's only one being here. We're all like sparks from that one being. And it's that inner vision that we want to raise higher and higher and higher, and that's an entry point to the Shema, that God is one means there's only one being here, which the physical brain can't get, but I have a vision in my soul that can see it. And this is not, you don't have to do this meditation. This is one of endless possible concepts, but this is a really great one to connect with the Shema. So if you'll make yourselves comfortable in your chair, the position doesn't matter, just please don't cross your arms or legs. Anything that's comfortable. You can be lying in a bed if you're watching this from home, or on a couch. And just allow your body to relax. Keep your spine long and lifted if you can. And let's focus on our breathing. If you recall, we noticed there are 4 aspects to each breath. There's the in-breath. There's a hold after the in-breath. Then there's the out-breath. And a hold after the out-breath. So 4 aspects of the whole breathing cycle. Breathing in, then a waiting there, then a breathing out, and then a pause there. Let's even those 4 out, so it's maybe 3-4 seconds for each part. So if you'd like to go together once with me, we'll breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Let it out. 2, 3, 4. And pause there. 2. Once again. Breathing in. And a pause. And out. And a pause. Continue that whatever speed is comfortable for you, just noticing the 4 aspects of breath. Just doing this, all kinds of relaxation triggers are at play. You may notice already the waves of your mind are slowing. Perhaps that executive function in your mind is considering taking a little break. I want to introduce one more physical piece, which is very helpful. Last week we focused on the breath under the nostril. If you want to look back, this week we're going to focus on diaphragmatic breathing. If you've never done that, each time you breathe in, rather than your chest expanding, let your belly expand and blow up like a big happy balloon, right? So every time you breathe in, allow that belly to expand so your abdominal wall pulls down. And when you breathe out, your belly comes back in. If you need an image, if you've ever seen a baby breathe when they're sleeping, this is how they breathe. Their belly just opens up wide and round, and when they breathe out, it just relaxes back in. So keep the cycle of your breathing and the 4 aspects, but try and, if you can, engage that abdominal breathing, which brings so much more of your nervous system into the game. Now, if you recall, at home you may take longer to do each of these steps. We're going to open up a wisdom gateway. That is, in the rhythm of this breath, the pause between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath, that will be our gateway to introduce wisdom into our consciousness. Just become aware of that in our cycle. The end of the in-breath, and there's a pause and emptiness there. That's our gateway. And the beginning of the out-breath, that's the other side of the gateway. Just focus on that gateway as you cycle through your breaths 2 more times. Now, in that beautiful gateway, however you imagine it or picture it is all good. You can make it brighter and clearer. You can bring it to the center of your imaginative focus. You can add color. You can picture things entering it and exiting it. We're going to put inside that gateway our meditative concept, which are the 3 letters of the word shema. So if you can recall them, it's a sheen, a mem, and an ayin. Adam, please have that up on the screen for anyone at home to look at for a moment. And perhaps here, coming from the sheen, the word su'u. From the mem, the word marom. And from the ayin, the word enechem. In our wisdom gateway, this word shema is inviting us to lift up our eyes, recognize there's more than physical vision. There's only one being here. And see and hear that word, that meditation. And we'll allow that to fill our minds for a few more moments as we continue breathing. Before we open our eyes, let's move to quick prayer and see if we can take the focus, the intellectual focus and the beginnings of perhaps spiritual emotions from this meditation and allow them to imbue the physical body of our prayer with something of a different level of soul, of love and respect and awe. Together with me. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. And as you're in this prayer space, allow your mind and your heart to see any emotions, any deeper connections that came out of the meditation to flow into the body of that prayer, of that Shema. And if we were children, we might picture 2 wings on the Shema, allowing it to fly up, but being more mature adults, perhaps we can find a conceptual version of that where the Shema is floating, flying, rising upwards conceptually above time and space into worlds that experience more nullification before the Ein Sof. And when you're ready, relax your breathing, open your eyes. So those are the kind of meditations that practitioners of this system have been doing. There's stories of one chassid who went to say the It was some blessing. He was standing in a window, and he said the blessing, and he fell into a meditative state, and he stood there till the morning, right? Just unaware of anything around him, right? I mean, so obviously you could take more time. You can go much deeper. But the point is, create a micro-habit, learn how to generate spiritual emotions using intellectual focus and fill the mind, and then attach that to prayer, Torah study, mitzvahs through the day. And I promise you, do a 2-minute meditation and then say the Shema every morning. And then when you come to Temple Israel and we say the Shema at services, just clock how it's different. You'll find that prayer has a soul that's different, right? Or the Torah study you do here in the mornings has a soul that's different. And you can go deeper and deeper. There's no end to that. There's no end to the way we can elevate the world around us if we become masters in this. Yeah? Okay, so now we're going to get the good news is, which gotta get time for a line, right? I'll get a line. So we're not going to be able to do that every morning. So please, I want this to be something that each of us does, and it depends on you. If you want to get the most benefit out of the system, by now we should each of us, whether you're here in the room or not, I'm pointing at you guys online, you should have some moment of prayer in the morning. It can be a minute. And now we want to introduce some moment of meditation before that. It can be a minute. It can be half an hour if you want. But it can.
Can we do it every morning we come in here when we first start?
Maybe we can. But the important is that every day is better than once a week, right? So please introduce that, because this is the tool we're going to use to now learn to apply the rest of the technique. It's important. That's the doing it, right? I don't want to be learning martial arts and be staring at manuals all day. We want to get up and do the katas and spar a little, right? Get in your body. Same thing here. This is something we do. So please go with us on this. You'll get the most benefit.
Remember you said the shin had the burning
Yeah.
and the mem has the pool of water?
Yes.
And what is the ayin?
Ayin is actually the eye. Ayin means eye. Ayin is the letter of vision, and it's even shaped like two eyes with the nerve pathways from the eyes to the brain. So ayin is the letter of.
An eye.
If you like, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So every letter exists in form, in name, and in number, and they all function as a living being in terms of those three dimensions: form, name, and number. Mm-hmm. So in this case, the name and the form both relate to vision. It's beautiful. Yeah, and the sheen, you can see kind of a fire rising up here, and it sounds like fire. Aish has fire in it. Aish has sheen in it. And the mem is like a spring of water. I mean, you could do a whole year on just the letters in the Shema. So here's the good news. If I'm the kind of person that I've done my month of meditation and I've focused and I said the Shema, and I just, you know what? I'm not as excited about the Shema as I am about the latest movie that's coming out, or about the dessert my wife made for me for dinner. Those things I love and I'm amazed, but prayer, it's still kind of fuzzy. Haven't I failed? This isn't working. I'm not achieving anything, right? Because I haven't gotten my emotions. Also not true. And this is what we're about to learn. There are some people for whom this is just a natural thing, where they just, there's only one God. Yes, of course, I love that. Oh, goodness, I got to be a good person. And the emotions flow easily. Wonderful, that's a good thing. And they can easily create dynamic souls for their Torah mitzvah. There are other souls that we'll learn in our little note if we get to it today. For various kabbalistic reasons, it's not so easy to create full-fledged divine soul emotions. But even if that's the case, you can still do all the same work and achieve the same things using what we call tefuna. Right? And what is tefuna? Tefuna is an intermediate state between intellect and emotions, call it. Right? So if I have just plain intellectual ideas about something, they're cold, they're static, I'm not going to get up out of my chair. I can sit here easily considering them and intellectualizing, and I don't get excited at all. Right? If I have full-blown emotion, now I'm up, I'm moving, I have energy. There's a state in between where the intellect says, okay, I have this information, thanks Joey. How could I apply it? How could I apply it? How could this cold information be applied? And it starts to kind of imagine leaving the intellectual and kind of intellectually picturing what it would feel like to apply it, and you get what's called intellectual emotions. So within the intellect, there is an emotional body in the intellect, the emotions of the intellect. And tuna is when those are engaged, and it's still intellectual. I'm kind of imagining, okay, what if I did meditate every morning? What would happen? I could do that. Maybe it would help. And I'm going in that direction. I'm not excited to do it, but neither is it just emotional anymore. And at a certain point, if you do it enough, you form something like an intellectual opinion, right? And someone who has an opinion on something, it's already intellectual emotions. Like they're not looking at it subjectively anymore. Somehow they're wrapped up in it, right? So it's the way the intellect reaches for the emotions. Or as we said, if I can't feel the full feeling, well, I'm sitting here, I'm learning about this, I have a feeling I should feel the full feeling, right? So even if the feeling is not easy to get, I already have the feeling I should have the feeling, right? So you get kind of there's a meta feeling that's happening around the feeling that I'm perhaps aiming at, and that feeling is not just intellect, it is a feeling, right?
So it's a first step. It could be, for some people, the first step towards the emotional feeling.
It can, but the beautiful thing is it can also be the final step. It can achieve just as much, as we'll learn. That if I find, I'll be honest with you, Pesach cleaning does not get me excited, okay? Pesach cleaning, I dread it for a month in advance, and I just hope we don't have a fight while we're doing it, and oh my God, it's horrible. Like, I hate Pesach cleaning. Right? Okay, so there's a mitzvah, I need my tefuna, right? So I'm not going to be excited about it, but I can imagine that here I am cleaning out the ego and showing how committed I am to Judaism and also making the house clean, and we're going to have such a good Pesach, and look, we didn't have a fight this year, I got to imagine the benefit happening and that I should feel good. And using that tefuna, I can actually elevate the whole mitzvah to the same spiritual world as if I was a major tzaddik that not a tzaddik, but as if I was a Beinoni that experienced full emotions doing it, right? So that's the idea of tefuna, is that there's this intellectual emotional component that will be able to elevate the mitzvahs even if I don't feel the full feeling, and B, sometimes you can feel a big emotional feeling, but you've skipped the tefuna, and now you're just emotional because you want to be emotional, right? That can happen too. So we want to keep our emotions honest. Did they really stem from the intellect, or was I'm an emotional guy, yay, I'm being Jewish, right? That can happen too. So it's good for many reasons. So let's read a little bit. We're at the top of page 232. Shegam im ein yad sichlu v'ruach binato maseget leholid avat Hashem behitgalut libo. Even if one's
intellect and understanding are incapable of producing a revealed love of God in his heart.
And so I've focused, I've done my meditation, and I felt nothing, right? I'm not bouncing around with love and awe. Didn't happen. שיהיה ליבו בוער כריש באש, וחפץ בחפיצה וחשיקה ותשוקה מורגשת בלב לדווקא בו.
To make it burn as it ought with fiery flames, with a desire and a longing and a passion manifestly felt in the heart, to cleave to God.
Right. So this is the aim, is to meditate so that the way I felt when I had a crush when I was 17 on someone, and as they walked into the room, I was like, oh, I want to talk to this, I want to engage with this, I want to, have experiences with this, right? Like really emotions. Okay, we can get there, but even if we don't, רק אהבה המסותרת במוחו ותעלומות ליבו.
Instead, the love is hidden in his mind and in the recesses of his heart. At this point, the altar ready inserts a note stating that one's inability to reveal the love in his heart does not indicate a fault in his meditation. The cause may well inherent in the spiritual root of his soul.
Right, so now we're going to get into a little bit of the Kabbalah of why it is that one person may have very easy access to these emotions of the divine soul, and boom. Another person may work for months and have just kind of subtle flow going on, not like full-blown, fiery-hearted emotions. והסיבה לזה היא מפני היות המוחין שלו ונפש רוח נשמה שלו מבחינת עיבור והלם תוך התבונה ולא מבחינת לידה והתגלות כיודע ליודעי חן. Be prepared to not understand this. Just prepare yourself. Just be prepared. You can read it, but I don't understand it either. Go ahead.
The reason for this inhibition is that this person's intellect and nefesh, ruach, and neshama derive from the so-called ibur, conception, concealment within the supernal understanding and not from the stage of Leda, birth, and revelation, as is known to the students of the Kabbalah.
So I'm so glad he puts that at the end. As is known to the students of Kabbalah, which I'm not, so, who understands that? So what he's talking about is everything in the physical, and we'll finish with this probably, everything in the physical represents and explains something in the spiritual. So we know by looking at my psyche, I'm actually looking at the whole cosmos and even a godliness beyond the cosmos. So by understanding myself, I'm understanding something of the structure of godliness. Now, the way intellect and emotions work, as we learned, you have your intellect, and then within the intellect, there's an emotion within the intellect that's born, but it's still pregnant within the intellect, right? So if I'm at that stage where I say, I want to learn Russian, right? And it's just intellectual, this is okay, it's a nice language, it'd be hard, I can learn Russian. So at some point, a spark happens in the intellect that says, what would it feel like for me to learn Russian, right? How could that be applied? I could travel, I could connect with this, I could speak to, older relatives, whatever it is. I'm not feeling emotions, but in the intellect, it's left, as we said, the world of the intellect. This tfuna has started to flow, but it's still an emotion that is contained within the intellect. So we call that a state of ibur, right? That emotion has not yet been born. It is like a fetal emotion, right? So the mind, the intellect is pregnant with this emotion, but it's a developing emotion. It's not yet been born. That's a state of ibur for an emotion. Now, once I've spent 5 years learning Russian and I'm an expert in Russian, I've traveled to Russia 5 times and it's my identity and I get excited and I drink vodka and I sing Russian songs. Right now, it's been born. Now I have apparent full emotions and I get excited about sitting down or having a Russian conversation, say, right? So now the emotion has gone from a state of Leda, ibur, to a state of Leda, birth. So I think we all get that, right? That's easy to understand in my psyche. Now the same thing is true of the sefirot as they are within the spiritual worlds and within even godliness, right? There are midot that we've learned about, chesed, gevur, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, and malchut of the Ein Sof and of Atzilus, and those are full emotional flows within the sefirotic realities. But also above that, those flows start within Chokhmah, Bin, and Dat of godliness and of the spiritual worlds. So you have Chokhmah, Bin, and Dat, and the midot start in a state of pregnancy within the intellectual sefirot. So the cosmos works that way too. The cosmos has seichel, intellect of the cosmos. Within that, there are midot being born. Then those midot become born and become full-fledged flows within chesed, gevur, tiferet, etc. But it's cosmic. This is in Atzilus. This is spiritual realities that are before the universe is physically created. Now, our souls also come from those spiritual levels, right? We say that Malchus, for those Kabbalists who like to follow it, Malchus of Atzilus is called Knesset Yisrael. That's the source of all Jewish souls. But what level did that soul come from? It may have come from a level of exhibited emotion cosmically. So I may have a soul at the level of chesed cosmically, and now I'm born, and when I think about God, just my soul ignites with chesed, with love. But I may also my soul may stem from chesed as it's hidden within the intellect of the cosmos. Just like that happens in me, that happens with Jewish souls. Because we're learning about the cosmos from our consciousness. If that's the case, and by the way, at this time in history, more of us are from those levels, which are a sort of a lower, so to speak, level of soul than the full-blown midot souls, for various reasons. Many of us are like that. So we should know our soul stems from that, and for us, it's just part of our makeup spiritually that we're going to go straight from intellect kind of to action, to mitzvahs, without really engaging the full emotions. We're engaging the emotions as they were pregnant within the intellect of the cosmos. And so we're not going to always be able to easily access that. It's about the quality and level of our soul. And we shouldn't feel like a failure. And here's a big take home. If I'm that kind of person, if that's the level of my soul, and I'm meant to use tfuna to elevate my mitzvahs and my Torah, and tfuna is working great, And now I beat myself up and I'm upset and I'm depressed because how come I didn't meditate and experience full emotions and I'm not dancing around the room with holy joy? That actually may be my nefesh, my evil inclination. Right? That's my nefesh b'mit coming in again saying, you did all the work and you aren't good enough, eh? You should be on this level, right? Now you failed. Maybe you shouldn't try. My reaction that I'm depressed or upset, that I'm not experiencing full emotions, and I have to settle for tefuna emotions, and I'm really better than that, aren't I, right? I mean, how come I haven't achieved my full potential? That may just be my own pride. That may be nefesh b'mit coming in again. Nefesh Elokit says, you're here to do Torah mitzvahs, you're here to elevate the world. Here's a tool called tefuna. Meditate, use that tool, elevate the emotions, do your Torah mitzvahs, and your meditation has been effective, and you're elevating the world, and you are uniting with the Ein Sof, even if you can't consciously experience it to the point where you're dancing around the room. Okay, that's about you, though, right? You could still do it. That's what you're meant to do. Now you're upset that you're not at another level? Okay, who's that, right? Who's upset? So understand, many of the people that are in the world right now, their natural way of experiencing holy emotions is the more quiet, still voice emotions. Those are just as effective at elevating Torah mitzvahs. And in fact, if we get all upset and wonder, well, how come I'm not at a higher level? That's just nefesh b'mit coming in again, trying to trip us up. It's a lot. We'll pick this up next week. Any questions? Please hang out, and we can review or continue. I feel like that depressed us all. Suddenly, I left us all on a downer. Is that so? Well, Chag Sameach. It's Lag BaOmer.
Yeah, what's that? It's 30.
33rd day of counting the Omer. Yeah. So today's the day everybody counts the Omer because you're like, it's Lag BaOmer. Now you've counted the Omer just by saying that. It's Lamed Gimel is the third.